Some love stories uplift the world, and then there are those that quietly challenge our deepest assumptions about what love is supposed to be. We move through life side by side, create together, and share the same journey. There's just one label we never chose. What is it? Marriage. That was Goldie Hawn's way of describing her connection with Kurt Russell. A union that has endured for over 4 decades, untouched by formal promises, yet proving more resilient than countless traditional relationships in Hollywood. But then, at 79, during what appeared to be an ordinary exchange, Goldie Hawn left Hollywood quietly stunned. She revealed a perspective she had carried silently for 4 decades. "I never felt drawn to marriage with Kurt because I feared that defining it might somehow change what we had." It invites a deeper question. Does love truly require a ceremony to endure through time? Perhaps it was that careful awareness of what could be lost that allowed their connection to remain steady for more than 40 years. Leave a comment with 1 if Goldie Hawn's view resonates with you, or 0 if you see love through a different lens. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, because behind every legendary Hollywood romance lies an unseen layer, and we're here to explore it with you, right here. Not long after, he published a memoir titled "So You Are a Star," framing their separation as a story of freedom mistaken for betrayal, suggesting she had sought openness and closeness beyond their bond. The industry stirred instantly. Journalists gathered outside her Pacific Palisades home, yet Goldie declined every question. When asked whether she wished to respond, she offered only a restrained smile and said, "I once cared for him." But there are moments when affection alone cannot hold things together. She closed the door and let the noise remain outside. From then on, Goldie chose a quieter life with her 2 young children, Oliver and Kate, in a simple house on a hill facing the sea. By daylight, she stepped into roles before the camera. By evening, she read stories at her children's bedside. After they slept, she would sit near the window, gazing toward the distant lights of Los Angeles, the same city that continued to call her the symbol of joy. Back then, Kurt was 16 and Goldie 21. 2 young spirits briefly crossing paths, like distant lights moving through different skies. Years later, they encountered each other again, both carrying the weight of earlier chapters, their eyes marked by experiences that had softened youthful certainty. In that instant, Goldie sensed something unexpected, as if life were quietly extending another opportunity, without guaranteeing it would be gentler than those before. Kurt was no longer the reserved boy she once knew. After the end of his marriage to actress Susan Hubley, he had become more grounded, more composed, shaped by setbacks that taught him how to stand again. At the same time, Goldie had lived through 2 separations, was raising 2 children, and guarded a heart too tender to open without hesitation. A young woman with sunlit hair and a form shaped like art stepped into Hollywood's unyielding glare, carrying a presence impossible to ignore. She sparkled intensely, an image of warmth and innocence refined into radiant allure. Yet even at the height of that glow, a strange sense of being unseen quietly followed. The industry applauded her smile, her easy laughter, her playful image on screen, while missing the thoughtful mind and emotional range beneath the surface. "I became known for being charming," she reflected years later. Her tone was calm, though it carried weight. But that was never the whole story. Behind the polish and applause, I worked endlessly to be recognized, not as an ornament or a moment of humor, but as someone with something real to express. In that still pause, Goldie came to understand that certain injuries never completely disappear. They simply settle beneath awareness, waiting for a sound or a thought to stir them again. She accepted that she could not protect her children from every hurt, because the weight of grown-up sorrow often finds its way into young hearts, leaving marks that time does not fully remove. At night, she would remain by the window, studying the faraway glow of Los Angeles, the same place that had framed both her brightest moments and her deepest trials. It became clear to her that time has the power to soften nearly everything: recognition, appearance, even glory. But it cannot undo the imprint left by connection and separation. At her core, she was unchanged: a mother, a partner, a witness to survival. A woman who had given herself completely, who had endured more than most could see, and who carried forward not only memory, but a quiet resilience shaped by a life deeply experienced. It was the quiet of two people who felt unfamiliar while sharing the same walls. In her journal, she noted, "I didn't betray him. I only wanted to live honestly. But it felt like that version of me wasn't welcome." By 1978 to 1979, their union was already weakening. Bill spent long stretches traveling while Goldie remained absorbed in filming Private Benjamin. The space between them widened until it could no longer be crossed. Each time Bill returned, he no longer recognized the soft presence he once cherished. And when Goldie looked at him, she saw someone weighed down by resentment toward everything around him. She later admitted to a close friend, "I gave everything I could, but perhaps joy was never meant to stay with me." In 1980, Bill formally ended the marriage. She once spoke with disarming clarity, saying, "In this industry, reaching 40 often feels like being written out." The thought echoed far beyond her own experience, touching every woman who has ever felt time turn its back on her. Yet Goldie did not vanish, not in spirit. Beneath the surface shine, she continued to struggle, not only for meaningful work, but for a sense of calm within herself. The unease that followed her from childhood never truly left. Recognition failed to quiet it. Instead, it made the echoes louder. Some nights, she sat motionless before the mirror, tears tracing her reflection as she reminded herself to keep breathing. Some mornings, she questioned whether the image the world celebrated was slowly overtaking the woman she was trying to protect. This meeting was more than a passing moment. It marked a shift for them both. Each arrived carrying history, each holding on to hurts that time had not fully softened. Kurt was no longer the uncertain boy from years before. He had become grounded, shaped by lessons learned through experience. Failure no longer unsettled him, and that steadiness is what guided him back toward Goldie. Goldie, at the same time, stood at a delicate crossroads, caring for her children while bearing the lasting impressions of love that never healed quickly. Her heart had endured repeated fractures, and with every attempt to open it again, hesitation followed close behind. Yet in that instant, as their eyes met, she sensed that life was quietly asking her to choose once more. Yet within those walls, there was only a woman learning how to inhale and exhale inside a vast quiet. Beneath the surface brilliance, Goldie still faced the deep currents moving through her inner world. At times, in the stillest hours before dawn, she would wake from restless dreams, her skin chilled, her thoughts racing. In those visions, she returned to the stage, lights blazing, applause rolling endlessly, only to find that when she lowered her head, the space before her was empty. She stood alone beneath the glow, surrounded by a silence sharper than darkness. The dream returned again and again, leaving its mark. In those moments, she understood that recognition was never designed to satisfy a longing for connection. No matter how far she climbed, a hollow space remained. The brightness, the praise. They could never reach what was missing inside her, a place only genuine closeness could ever touch. They sat close together on set, trading only a handful of quiet remarks, while the pauses between them carried their own language. In those shared stillnesses lived an understanding known only to people shaped by both assent and loss. Often nothing needed to be spoken. A look held, a light brush of the hand was enough. The quiet stretched on, yet it never felt heavy. Within it, time seemed to loosen its grip, allowing them to simply remain there together. As the gentle glow of evening filtered through the studio window, Goldie allowed herself a smile, unperformed, unobserved, offered not to the world, but to her own heart. "I love him," Goldie once shared, "not because of what he gives me, but because of how he shows up for my children." That same year, they settled into a modest home overlooking the ocean in Malibu. Mornings unfolded with shared coffee. Nights ended with quiet films once the children had fallen asleep. No rings, no ceremonial dress, no formal promises. Just two wounded souls carefully relearning how to trust softness. Still, even within that calm, Goldie held a subtle space inside herself. Some evenings, while Kurt slept nearby, she remained awake, eyes tracing the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of the waves beyond the walls, worried that naming eternity might cause it to disappear. Hollywood took notice. They labeled Goldie and Kurt the most unconventional pair in America, living as partners, raising a family, yet never formalizing it. In interviews, Goldie would smile and say lightly, "Marriage was never the destination." It was a smile shaped by release, a quiet easing after years of carrying life's weight. She was no longer the girl she once had been. She had become a woman tempered by loss, tested by choices, and altered by experience. In that brief pause, meeting her own reflection, Goldie understood she had recovered something long misplaced, a piece that could only be reclaimed from within. Weeks later, Kurt asked her to share a drink at a small spot in Los Angeles. That evening, laughter came more freely than either had anticipated, as if familiarity and understanding had finally found room to breathe. Their exchanges, once careful and restrained, began to flow with an ease that felt both new and deeply reassuring. That incident, though unplanned, offered them a pause to consider one another, what they had survived, what remained unresolved, and what still waited ahead. In a stretch of shared quiet, Goldie recognized that life resists prediction and that uncertainty is often what gives it depth. A single night can alter direction, yet that didn't signal retreat. Instead, it affirmed the choice to continue, meeting whatever emerged with resolve. It wasn't their first encounter with the unexpected, but it felt like the first time they faced it side by side, carrying past scars alongside fresh hope. In each other's gaze, they found more than sympathy. They found recognition shaped by experience, and within that darkened hour when plans unraveled, they came to see that such moments are woven into the path itself. After two fractured unions, Goldie Hawn no longer placed her faith in assurances. In a 1981 interview, when asked whether she could open her heart again, she answered with a gentle, knowing smile, saying, "To me, marriage is a beautiful room, but one without a door." In that moment, the world caught a rare glimpse of the woman who had mastered laughter for others, yet struggled to offer the same kindness to herself. After repeated loss, Goldie believed her heart had quietly sealed itself. But life, with its familiar sense of irony, introduced someone who made no grand vows, yet chose to remain. In 1980, on the set of Swing Shift in Los Angeles, 38-year-old Goldie crossed paths again with Kurt Russell, an actor she had first worked alongside 17 years earlier in a family-oriented project. Goldie laughed until tears traced down her face. That laughter, rising out of disorder, marked the first moment in years when she felt genuinely awake again. Later, she reflected, "Our beginning came from a small misstep. Maybe that's why it feels honest." Kurt never relied on sweeping words. He offered no pledges of rescue, no vows of permanence. He simply remained present. He took Oliver and Kate to school, sat with them watching cartoons, showed them how to throw a ball, and quietly cleared the table when the day wound down. No grand gestures, no rehearsed lines, only steady, ordinary care that once would have brought Goldie to tears in solitude, because for the first time, someone chose to stay without asking for anything in return. The public praised her strength. Those closest to her understood it differently. It wasn't bravery, but caution shaped by memory. Two endings had taught her that the most alluring vows can sometimes be the very forces that undo affection. Someone once wondered aloud, "Kurt, doesn't it worry you that nothing ties her to you?" He answered without hesitation, "No. Love that's real doesn't need restraints." The response left Goldie silent. She had believed she was alone in carrying the fear of loss. Yet here stood someone who understood how to honor freedom without choosing distance. From that point forward, Goldie and Kurt shared a life like two travelers who had finally reached safe ground. No rituals, no symbols, no labels, only calm mornings, unassuming meals, and quiet looks that said enough. Beneath the muted glow of the bar, they traded fragments of ordinary days, distant recollections, and hopes left unfinished. As the evening deepened, Kurt suggested a brief stop at her new place in Pacific Palisades. A beginning of sorts, a quiet refuge where she hoped calm might finally take root after years of unrest. When they arrived, an unexpected obstacle surfaced. No key. Kurt chose to force the door. An alarm cut through the air, sirens followed, and pulses of red and blue fractured the night into tension and noise. Yet instead of fear, they paused, facing one another, sharing the strange humor and disbelief of the situation, aware that this disruption, too, was simply another moment life had placed in their shared path. They had come to embody the idea that the deepest bonds do not always ask for vows. A connection that needs no speeches, no public pledges, no ceremony, only shared presence and a quiet understanding beyond form. Still, on extended nights while the Malibu waves moved steadily outside, Goldie often lay awake, listening to the wind trace the edges of the window. She knew the unease around marriage had never truly left her, resting deep within like an old mark that time could not fully erase. That feeling, though met again and again, never disappeared. And perhaps it was that very awareness that kept what they shared intact, because sometimes closeness survives by accepting uncertainty, not from a lack of devotion, but because what they held required no label, no structure. It lived instead in mutual recognition, restraint, and a silent respect that asked for nothing more. Laughter and applause surged around her, yet in that instant, Goldie turned toward Kurt, her gaze carrying everything she had never found the courage to say. Within the thunder of cheers and the burst of lights, the world seemed to dissolve, leaving only the two of them held in a shared, wordless clarity. By 2023, after experiencing 2 intrusions at their Malibu home, Goldie faced many restless nights. not over what could be taken, but over something far more delicate, the threat to the sense of refuge she had spent a lifetime trying to protect. In time, they stepped away from the noise of Los Angeles and settled in Palm Desert, where open land met quiet horizons. There, beneath calm skies and fading sunsets, Goldie realized that silence no longer unsettled her. It carried a hint of solitude, but it was a softness she could finally rest within. The note said, "If you choose marriage, you risk losing yourself for a third time, even if that choice is with me." It was written in 1990, the year she intended to formalize their bond, only to step back instead. When the moment was mentioned later, Kurt responded with an easy smile. "I never needed a ceremony," he said. "I only wanted to care for her." Few words, yet they quieted every question. Perhaps affection is rarely stated with such clarity. In her last journal, Goldie reflected, "I was never frightened by marriage. I feared waking one day and not finding him beside me. That fear, to me, is love." Now Goldie and Kurt live quietly in Palm Desert, where wind moves through cactus-lined paths and evening skies soften into shades of violet. In a world where it is easy to bind two lives with ink, yet difficult to hold them together with care, their journey feels quietly extraordinary. While grand ceremonies and polished pages celebrate flawless unions, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell chose a softer truth, a bond without signatures, yet one that lasted more than 4 decades. They remained together not out of obligation, but out of desire. Each morning they rose and chose one another again, and perhaps that, remaining without being bound, is the most sincere commitment there is. A vow never spoken aloud, yet etched into every shared breath, every smile, and every silence they allowed to exist between them. Years after she and Kurt built a life side by side, Goldie Hawn arrived at a quiet realization, one that often reveals itself only to those shaped by absence. Even the gentlest happiness can sometimes reflect the fears we carry deepest within. On still Malibu mornings, light slipped softly through the curtains. Kurt sat with the paper in hand, Goldie poured coffee, and their children's laughter drifted through the garden. Everything felt calm, complete, almost unreal. It was the kind of peace she had imagined for most of her life, the closeness, the steadiness, the feeling of finally belonging. And yet, within that calm, something subtle stirred, as if the very safety she had found was illuminating old marks that had never fully faded. Then, in February 2025, during a reflective conversation with Vanity Fair, 79-year-old Goldie Hawn finally spoke aloud a truth she had carried for 4 decades. Her tone was composed and measured, yet edged with vulnerability. "I didn't choose marriage because I was afraid of losing him," she said. The reaction was instant stillness. For years, many had assumed that avoiding marriage signaled independence or defiance. For Goldie, it meant something far quieter, a persistent fear that fixing love into form might cause it to fade. This time, the industry offered no commentary, and within that pause, she was seen not as a symbol, but as a person, someone who had loved fully and who still felt a tremor when naming love, even after a lifetime shaped by it. At the time, the press labeled them the unconventional pair, holding them up as an emblem of affection free from form and ritual. Whenever the subject of marriage arose, Goldie would offer a gentle smile, serene yet distant, and reply, "Celebrations make me nervous. When everything is honored, something fragile can crack." People laughed, hearing it as charm or humor, unaware that beneath flawless polish, her hands quietly shook. The fear was genuine, shaped not by defiance, but by memory, by watching promises once declared eternal bend beneath expectation. For Goldie, devotion did not require ink or ceremony, because the moment love was confined, she worried it might quietly slip through her fingers. In 1990, when many believed their long-anticipated wedding was finally approaching, Goldie quietly arranged a modest ceremony in Aspen. The gown had arrived, the invitations were prepared, every small detail aligned. Then, just days before it was meant to happen, she withdrew without a message or explanation. Kurt searched through Los Angeles, then traveled on to Colorado, where he eventually found her in a simple wooden cabin, firelight shifting softly across her distant expression. She lifted her eyes and said in a near whisper, "If I marry you, I might lose the very thing that holds us." Kurt offered no reply. He only sat beside her, sharing the stillness. Within that silence, an understanding formed, that sometimes love survives because it remains unnamed. What defined them was never the absence of ceremony, but the quiet resolve to choose one another again and again, each ordinary day. She possessed everything that might seem complete: connection, belonging, a sense of shelter, yet somewhere within, an unnamed ache remained. It was not despair, but a muted hollow, a private unease she carried without words. She feared the hush that follows laughter, the pause that arrives after joy, the morning when presence might turn into absence again. But instead of overtaking her, that fear became a teacher, revealing something vital: that love is not the removal of uncertainty, but the willingness to remain while it exists. And so, in that modest home by the sea, surrounded by warm light and steady waves, Goldie learned to live not by chasing flawless happiness, but by honoring the quiet grace found in each imperfect, ordinary day. The woman who once convinced the world to believe in lasting romance eventually admitted that she had spent much of her life afraid of losing it. When journalists later asked Kurt Russell for his thoughts, he responded with a gentle, knowing smile, his expression carrying an understanding that required no elaboration. "We still wake up and choose each other," he said. The words were simple, almost offhand, yet they held a deeper meaning, a view of love rooted not in ceremony or declaration, but in quiet, deliberate devotion. And perhaps it was because they relied on no symbols, no documents, and no audience that their bond endured for 4 decades, burning softly rather than brightly, sustained not by spectacle, but by steadiness. At the March 2025 Academy Awards inside Los Angeles' Dolby Theater, Goldie and Kurt stepped onto the stage side by side. Golden light washed over their silver-toned hair and familiar faces. They still glowed, yet in Goldie's gaze the brightness felt gentler, touched by weariness. She clasped Kurt's hand firmly, slightly unsteady yet grounded, as though standing on the edge of words she had carried for decades. "Sorry," she laughed softly. "I can't read the script. I have cataracts now." The theater burst into laughter, but through it all, Kurt never released her hand. That quiet, unremarkable gesture held more meaning than any ceremony ever could. Backstage, when a reporter asked how she felt, Goldie answered gently, "I don't need anyone to call me his wife." "I only need to know that when I wake each morning, he is still beside me." The words traveled quickly, echoing across social platforms within hours, shared again and again, a late but unmistakably genuine confession of devotion. A week later, In a rare conversation with the Los Angeles Times, Goldie offered a line that lingered with readers long after they finished reading. Love doesn't disappear through betrayal. It fades through fear. The sentence was delicate yet precise, uncovering what she had quietly carried for 4 decades. She had not stepped away from marriage for independence, but from a deep concern that love, once defined, might slip away again. In their quiet Palm Desert home, an old handwritten note was later found tucked inside a drawer, its ink blurred as though shaped by tears long since dried. Time moved forward without announcement, lifting away the shine of youth and the noise of recognition, while leaving intact the quiet core of what bound them. Then, on an unremarkable day, the woman who once convinced the world that joy needed no ritual chose to speak. At 79, Goldie Hawn finally revealed the truth she had guarded for years, that beneath the laughter and the luminous public image, there had always lived a single, steady fear, the fear of losing the one she loved most. And yet, in a quiet contradiction, it was that very fear that preserved what they shared, soft, lasting, and deeper than any vow a ceremony could ever contain. They are rarely seen now, choosing quiet evening walks, fingers intertwined. When someone asked whether she regretted never formalizing their bond after 4 decades, Goldie simply smiled. "We didn't have a ceremony," she said, "but perhaps we've lived a marriage for 40 years, just without an audience." And as the light gently receded, their story settled into a lingering reflection. Is a contract the measure of devotion, or merely the language we use for the fear of losing it? 4 decades side by side, without vows, without symbols, without an altar. Yet Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell remained together, moving through every season time offered. No witnesses to a formal union, but countless hearts have recognized a quiet partnership shaped by patience, understanding, and trust. Their journey, gentle yet touched with longing, asks us to reconsider what love and partnership truly mean. Is marriage the ultimate evidence of devotion, or simply a way to quiet the fear of loss? Through Goldie and Kurt, we are reminded that love does not depend on ritual to exist. It reveals itself through patience, through trust, through the decision to remain when leaving might seem simpler. In a world where affection often breaks under the pressure of expectation, their story suggests that real fulfillment may not lie in promises of forever, but in the quiet choice to stay, day after day, even when no one is there to see it. And maybe the journey of Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell leaves us with a quiet question. Does genuine love require a grand celebration to validate it, or simply 2 people willing to remain side by side without making promises aloud? What about you? Do you believe in a dazzling ceremony filled with spectacle, or in a lasting bond that asks for no vows and no stage? Share your thoughts below with 1 if Goldie's path speaks to you, or 0 if you see love differently. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to support our channel, where we explore the most enduring, emotional, and deeply human love stories Hollywood has ever revealed.